Chiori is a character that has a lot of unique things going for her, from her quite aesthetically pleasing design to her kit being the first that allows a character to swap while midair. She's currently a fashion designer based in Fontaine, where she runs her business, the Chioria Boutique, and has designed outfits for many of the other Fontaine characters, including Linny, Lynette, and Navia. It's pretty cool that Chiori, as an immigrant, is running one of Fontaine's most influential and notable clothing shops.
Immigrants, we get the job done.
One of the reasons for her clothing being so well liked in Fontaine is due to how each one clearly tells a story, and in the capital of entertainment that is Fontaine, the people love a good story. Chiori is always committed to her designs and work and doesn't compromise. She's always straightforward and blunt, even with her actions where she'll just yeet out customers that are being snobby. This has earned her a somewhat notorious reputation to some of the people, especially people that are negatively critical of a foreigner having high success in Fontaine. When I first saw Chiori's strip marketing reveal, I remember being super impressed with how unique her design is, probably because her warmer color palette makes her stand out more from the other Fontaine characters, who have more of a cooler colored palette. I get that she's a Geo character too, but I can't help but feel that her design is what I would imagine for a foreign Inazuman fashion designer living in Fontaine. Not to mention that she also dual wields weapons, making her join both Child and Alhaitham on this fighting style. Since her character design is so unique to me, I wanted to take a quick look into her lore and see how it plays a part into her character design and even story quest. Chiori grew up in Inazuma, but her upbringing followed a non-traditional route. Her parents were busy merchants and weren't as home as much, so they weren't as strict with nurturing Chiori with Inazuma's traditional aspects of etiquette for young girls, such as practicing painting and tea ceremonies. This meant that she was more free to do things that were just more natural to her, but informal to others, like running off to catch fish or preferring dual swords over the traditional Inazuma sword arts of using a single sword. The one passion and skill she developed was in needlework, admiring fabric for being smooth and beautiful. Her parents enrolled her to a lot of classes with tailoring teachers. Unsurprisingly, she didn't get along with many of them, but nonetheless, she learned a lot from them. With Fontaine being the capital of fashion, an idea came to her head one day to move there to start the Chioria Boutique, and she suddenly just decided to do so. It didn't matter how feasible of a plan this was. All that mattered was how she felt at the time. This ambition was recognized by the gods, and she received her Geo vision right before heading to Fontaine. So in summary, her rather lenient childhood and upbringing established her as someone who has a passion and skill set for tailoring, and prefers doing everything her way. Now with this established, let's take a look at how these traits show up in her character today. Her disregard for formality takes shape in her fighting style. Unlike other sword users in Inazuma, who all use single blades, Chiori makes use of two, simply believing that two is better than one. It also makes sense that she doesn't have a sheathing animation that's characteristic of the other sword users from Inazuma. Her constellation is also called Chisoria, meaning scissors in Latin, and so she fights as if she's tailoring and weaving through fabric. My favorite sequence is the third string in her normal attack, where she looks like she is knitting with two needles. One more detail is that her elemental burst has her posing with her blades shaped like scissors, before cutting her enemies like silk. Chiori has a very blunt way of speaking. What you see is what you get. Get to the point.
Cut to the chase.
Chiori doesn't like to dilly-dally or go on tangents about anything because it's not time efficient. This is why her personality is so straightforward. Something needs to be done, and it's efficient to just say what's on someone's mind. There's no need for formalities. We saw this a lot in her story quest. There's a competing rival messing with her business who even messed with her friend, Kirara, so she straight up went up to him and put him in its place, despite some reservation from Chevrus. When there is fake news harming her business reputation, she goes to one of her vendors and is straight up with him about them being lies. There are no formalities, even amongst frequent business partners. Her passion is clearly seen in her work too, with how much effort she puts into every order that someone makes, and never compromises, even if some richer person demands priority. Her keen ability to tell sincere stories through her clothing is what makes people value her work, and people know what they're getting with her. These stories she puts into her clothing are so sincere because it's always based on how Chiori feels. So the emotions and experiences put into them are genuine, and people will appreciate that. One final thing I wanted to note about her is that while she has a dream of making the Chiori boutique recognized throughout all of Tevat, she doesn't really chase it because she doesn't want to use her dreams as a reason to urge herself onward, but instead just take things one day at a time, living in the present. Which is fitting since we know that she received her vision after basically deciding on a whim to move to Fontaine. And it's interesting because I feel it goes against the grain of lots of themes and stories these days, where having dreams to chase is what helps us keep moving forward. But in Chiori's case, it's as if her dream is chasing her because it's always other people that are wondering when she'll expand her boutique to the rest of Tevat, to which Chiori literally just says, whenever she feels like it. So unlike most people, Chiori doesn't worry about the future because she wants to make the most of the present, which is not a very common mindset amongst people, but as we know, Chiori is anything but conventional. That's gonna do it for this video. Just a rather small one I wanted to make after reading through her lore and playing through the story quest. I'll likely be posting a video about Arlecchino soon. Alrighty, thank you for watching, and